Подію, яка вже вдруге у Львові об'єднує мистецькі ініціативи для здоров'я. І для першого важливого вітального слова в серці міста я хочу запросити пана Андрія Івановича Садового, мера міста.
Доброго дня. My dear friend Christopher Belli, шановний пане ректоре Національної академії мистецтв, шановні високоповажні пані та панове, для мене велика честь, що ви своєю присутністю освячуєте цю сесійну залу, де збираються депутати і приймають дуже важливі рішення для громади міста Львова. Звичайно, що війна змінила наше розуміння дуже багатьох речей. Якщо раніше мистецтво ми дуже часто сприймали так рустикально, як можливість відволіктись від тих проблем, які в нас є, надихнутися, отримати новий імпульс, то
get an impetus, but with the war we have a different understanding of the mission and importance of arts. I remember the last time Christopher Bailey visited Lviv, and the lecture that was delivered at Zankovetska's theater, then he was also invited to the town hall. His lecture really triggered an absolutely different mindset for me personally, because I understood the key message. When healthcare is helpless, arts is of help. At our municipal hospital, we already have more than 28,000 of injured. We are absolutely aware of the power of arts. At 7 in the courtyard there will be a veteran play, The Lift. Veteran wrote this play alongside professional directors. They prepared it, and veterans will be acting in this play. We also open UNBROKEN Home Center, where it's possible for the veterans to learn how to play different musical instruments. There will be an arts workshop to be open soon, where there will be a possibility to acquire different skills of sculpture and many others. And my conviction is that different types of arts is a venue to have new feelings open for those who were impacted by war. And I do not mean only those who were serving. It's also about civilians. We don't really want to speak a lot about that, but we know when people are back from war, very often they suffer from a post-traumatic stress disorder, and the same goes for civilians. And well, we do not talk enough about that, but we understand that rehabilitation without mental rehabilitation, and we know that mental health rehabilitation is not really possible without artistic interventions. I am really inspired by these cases when there is a great concert at the Philharmonic, and the people who attend, they lost their limbs in the war, but during this concert they no longer feel phantom pains. And we know that actually even with drugs and other medical interventions, it's not helping, but art is helping. That is why we'll have amazing speakers today. We will have an extremely wise discussion. I also would like to make an announcement that we made an agreement with Christopher that we are going to start a new study program jointly with UNBROKEN University, with our Arts Academy. This is going to be a training program encompassing healing arts, because we understand that it's really important. We have 12 different study programs. There is a great demand from colleagues from other cities, other municipalities. They come here and they get inspired by the practices that we are offering here. I am convinced that it's going to gain a lot of popularity. I am also thankful to Ms. Bunda, representing the municipality, because she will be leading the process. I'm also grateful to Vasil Kosiv. Mr. Kosiv is director of the Arts Academy, so he is acutely aware of the depths of it, because on a daily basis he sees those who were impacted by the war, and we know that through art it's possible actually not to feel the pain of war. And last but not least, last month I had a conversation with a veteran. He is working now he is restoring old objects, and I asked him, how much time did it take you to feel that you are back to your previous life? Well, he was not heavily injured, but he said that it took him 2 years to be back to normalcy. And now think about a young person, a person who loses their leg or their arm. And yes, of course, we can have great prosthetics, but a person feels great pain. That is why through arts, falling in love with music, drama, other kinds of arts, through sports, you can transform yourself. That is why the power of arts is just incredible. And all of you who are present here in this hall, you really know much more than I do, but it's really important that you understand your responsibility, because what each of you can do is really amazing. And there is a lot of responsibility, of course, for you, but I would like to express my deep gratitude for everything that you've already done, for everything you are doing, and for everything that you will accomplish in the future. I am deeply grateful for our solidarity and unity. Glory to arts, glory to Ukraine. It's an honor for the second time for me to invite to the opening word Lesya Khemrayeva, the head of the Department of Policies of Accessibility of the Ministry of Culture of Ukraine. Thank you. I would like to welcome everyone who have gathered here, dear friends, colleagues. It's a great pleasure for me to be present here in this venue, this hall, to be with all of you gathered here, because I know that this is not the first time you're organizing this Congress, and I understand that what we have already achieved a lot, but it's great to witness the progress we made and to see this continued cooperation. It's for the second time that the Ministry of Culture has an honor to be present at this event. That is why I would like to express my gratitude to all of you, that there are more and more of us, and that this subject becomes broader, because it's really important that we have good quality of our intentions and their enforcement. As the mayor has already mentioned, we work in different directions. For our ministry, it's extremely important to focus on mental health, psychosocial support, recovery. Of course, they are priority dimensions for us. That is why we have a priority project of the ministry, the Art to Help. Within the framework of this project, we already have some success cases. We cooperate with UNESCO and UNICEF. We have already elaborated some guides to be presented soon. They are related to the library domain, how one can feel supported through the use of this format. I'm going also to raise another topic, because we understand that art really helps, but we also know that the cultural institutions are perceived in a different way, because this is where we come to feel supported, to recover, to find ourselves, to find our thoughts, and to understand where we are now. That could be really this point of the next stage of your life. And of course, we understand that it's a more broader perception now, because the people who go to the theater, it's not only about seeing the performance of the play, it's also about this emotional pull that receive, to move forward, to receive answers to their questions. That is why the realm of arts and different institutions related to this field, they have a broader perspective. These are those spaces, because we know that libraries, they are not just for storage of books, and theaters are not only for plays. These are spaces where you can feel recovered and where you can find answers to the question. That is why for the Ministry of Culture, it is crucial to work in parallel directions to develop mental health support for those who attend different cultural institutions, and also to support the representatives of this particular area, because we have people who work in libraries, who work in theaters, in museums. These are the people who contact with those people who come to see them. That is why it's so important for us to support our artists. And there was a study conducted on the basis of which we have cooperation with the Red Cross of Ukraine. We try to support our colleagues on the ground in their communities, municipalities in different regions, providing first psychological aid. And we understand that this is just the beginning of this journey, and we need to continue. There is another priority project under the framework of which we also cooperate closely with libraries. We have a tool. We have already elaborated an online series for libraries as a space of psychosocial support, covering those who cannot benefit from offline studies. We can play it, and it means that you can get access to this material, and maybe that will be a venue for you to find answers to the question that you have. That is why we have priority projects at the level of the ministry, but we also have priority objectives, of course, as an institutions. That is why it's important for us to understand, and international experience is critical here. International implementation of different projects. We really try to think in what way, through arts, means of culture, we could be of support to each other. Arts therapy has different perception now, and of course, it depends on different interpretations and understanding that we have in different communities. That is why we need to understand which type of art therapy would work in the Ukrainian context, what else we could draw on. That is why we try to work on this methodology. We are absolutely open to exchange of cases, best practices, success cases. Generally speaking, the mayor has already stressed that when our veterans, men and women, try to return to their lives. And there is another example that we already have, the Theater of Veterans. Probably you already heard about that, but we know how important it is for the veterans. By telling everyone about their experience, it's really important, because this is the venue for them to express themselves, to disseminate this information, to understand where they are and how they feel. Through this type of recovery by means of arts, they can also change their occupation even, because before their military service, they could be in the theater, or that could be an opposite story. They could be economists, but they lost a limb, and they understood that through arts and this recovery, there is a new path for them of being an artist. And of course, reskilling is really important, changing your occupation. This is another important lens for us. We are open to elaborate on such cases. So as you see, there are so many questions that we have, and we know that this is a challenging process with many things to be handled, but there are so many parallel processes, because we have the war ongoing and we have recovery at the same time. We have the support process taking place. That is why it is extremely important for us to have expertise, to have everyone engaged, to understand what everyone has to offer. And let's not forget that first and foremost, all of us are human beings. And when we have a human-centered approach, it means that solutions will be there. They will definitely be there. We also had the National Week of Accessibility. That was the second time the ministry coordinated this event. What we discovered during this initiative was that when we place a human at the core of everything, the sky's the limit. That is why we truly hope that all ideas and initiatives could be implemented and enforced. It's important for us to have expertise and to have cooperation for that. That is why please take care. I wish all of you to have peaceful skies above your head. Thank you. At the heart of our greeting words, we also have the person who initiated, founded, inspired to have Healing Arts Week, because this is part of the global initiative. We have a co-founder of Jameel Arts Lab, Christopher Bailey, the initiator, the head, the lead of Arts and Health, Christopher Bailey. That will be the second occasion. We're happy to greet him here. Самотність – це не є відсутність людей поруч. Самотність – це нездатність виразити те, що для вас має найбільшу вагу. І є дуже багато того, що може не дозволяти нам виражати себе. Це можуть бути нерівні стосунки, це може бути фізична неповносправність, це може бути стан шоку. Іноді ми не можемо підібрати правильних слів, а можливо цих слів і немає, можливо це має бути якийсь звук, можливо це має бути рух у просторі, можливо це має бути якийсь образ, який має з'явитися перед нами. Мистецтво саме по собі нічого не лікує. Мистецтво допомагає нам індивідуально і колективно, зцілюючи наше життя. Це те, що допомагає нам в нашій індивідуальній і колективній мандрівці віднайти сенс і також мати відчуття приналежності до чогось. 2 роки тому, коли я також був у цій залі, я розпочав з того, що представив саму тему, описуючи країну, якої є своя релігія, своя мова, своя поезія, своя культура. І прийшла імперська сила, яка намагається позбутися цієї мови, позбутися культурних практик, даючись до голоду, війни, даючись до дуже багато чого. І я бачив, що так, мене слухали дуже уважно всі, і я говорив про Ірландію. Я насправді почав ділитися досвідом Ірландії і Британії, тому що цей досвід дуже перегукувався з тим досвідом, який переживає Україна в контексті нападу Росії. Але тепер, коли я вже краще знаю вас, я думаю, що мені не настільки некомфортно, як було тоді. Я не буду вам читати якусь лекцію про те, яким є ваш досвід. Замість цього я хотів би поділитися з вами тим, що я для себе почерпнув завдяки мистецьким практикам, які у вас є, як це робить наш світ кращим. 2 роки тому я згадував, зокрема, і про те, що є сила, яка допомагає відновитися від травми. Це може бути щось дуже просте. Так, ми можемо завести дітей в гори, в Карпати і показати їм, наскільки красивими є ці гори. Сила захоплення. Так, для того, щоб вони дійсно мали такий контакт з природою, тому що вони могли пережити дуже багато страху, вони могли дисоціюватися. Тут важливий аспект присутності серед чого, що є набагато більшим за вас. І замість цього відчуття применшеності, того, що ми є маленькими, ми відчуваємо себе надзвичайно важливою частинкою чогось цілого і більшого. І ця дисоціація перетворюється на асоціацію натомість. Я вже згадував про нейрологію, тому що в нас також після цього була зустріч в кабінеті мера міста Львова. І пан Василь Костів також був присутній. Так, чи є сьогодні з нами пан Василь? Є. Я трішки, можливо, навіть зараз присоромлю його, тому що в присутності мера в якийсь момент пан Василь сказав, що ваш опис цього захоплення, ландшафту, ми називаємо це все кітчем в Україні. Це зовсім не українська естетика, це не наш стиль, тому що в нас мистецтво воно має кидати виклик статусу кво, це є інновації, це є про відмінності, вирізнення. Це, знаєте, не якесь буржуазне поняття краси. І я почув цю ремарку, з повагою поставився, але я вам чесно скажу, я не зовсім зрозумів, про що там саме йшлося, і аж
London at the British Academy of Ukrainian art in the 1920s. And I saw what Ukrainian artists were doing during that modernist period. And I saw what happened to that movement and to the artists themselves when Stalin took over and replaced that innovative period with enforced naturalism and landscapes. And then I thought, now I'm beginning to understand the historical context. I had always thought about arts and health as art as being this tool to help us improve our health. And yet here in Ukraine, what I was experiencing palpably around me was the arts are not just a tool. The arts are one of the dimensions of this struggle. It is where the conflict exists. And that the arts and culture, that sense of identity, that sense of shared style, it's more than just a human right. It's part of what makes us human. And it was that seed that led us to start looking into, at WHO, a revision of our report on the health benefits of the arts, where instead of looking at it as a tool to improve health, we were looking at it as a health behavior, part of what it means to be human, just like good nutrition and regular exercise and sleep. And in that, we started looking at some of the research and seeing one cohort analysis that was done over 30 years, 20,000 people in the UK, that showed that engagement with the arts 2 or 3 times a week could lower the incidence of clinical depression by 50%. That, my friends, from a public health point of view, is a seatbelt moment. That moment when you have a statistic that says, this is more than just a nice to have. This is more than just an entertainment or a distraction. This saves lives. This saves lives in the sense that we can move from a feeling of inability, of disability, and not mere survival, but to thrive again. So what were some of the practices that I saw in Lviv? I saw a movement class in a community center where there were children that were displaced from the east of the country. And many of them exhibited many of the signs of dissociation. They had circles under their eyes. They hadn't been sleeping. There was some hair loss. They weren't looking at each other. They would jump at a loud noise. And in this exercise, they played Ukrainian music. And the only instruction was to match the speed and movement of someone next to you. And so they began to walk around in circles, and there wasn't much happening. And there was no choreography, there were no other instructions. But pretty soon, somebody would move in a funny way, and it would begin to get imitated. And then pretty soon, these complex patterns began to form from this group intelligence. And they began to notice this beautiful dance emerging without any central choreography. It was coming up just through people's natural behavior and the organic connections being made. And the result was they had to pay attention to each other. They had to look at each other and respond. And smiles began to burst onto their faces like mushrooms after the rain. I heard that was a Ukrainian expression. And I could see in real time dissociation becoming association. Now, the other thing I found out from talking to the person who was running the community center just 2 days ago is that the person who was running that program went back into the army, and that particular program stopped, which tells you the fragility of these things, that it can't just be dependent upon individuals. And one of the things we talked about with the mayor today is, how do we institutionalize this? How do we make this sustainable? How do we start forming the normative infrastructure to scale it, to bring it to the people in need, so it's no longer just 6 people here or 12 people here, but it's in the schools, it's in the hospitals, it's in the artistic institutions. Another event that I went to was in a children's theater here in Lviv, and it was a special drama therapy program for women whose children or partners were prisoners of war. And there was one woman who was describing how this was the first time she'd ever been on a stage. And she had been alone for a while. She wasn't taking care of herself, but she decided to give this program a chance. And the therapist held her by the arm, and she literally was shaking because she'd been in her room by herself for quite some time. And so to enter the stage, even without a script or a scene, was terrifying to her. And yet, with nervous laughter, she did it. She was guided into the presence of others looking at her. And it was the first step into this new world of thriving. Each one of them began to practice a monologue of something that was important to them. And it didn't matter. It could be about the war, it could be about their loved ones, or not. It doesn't matter what it was. It just had to be important to them. And there was one woman who was sitting in the corner, her arms crossed, her legs crossed, and kind of glowering. And at one point, the therapist asked her, do you have a monologue that you've been practicing? You don't have to. It's not required. And she said, no, I don't. I'm not a writer. I'm not an actor. I'm told that I'm supposed to be here to be comforted, but I do not want to be comforted. I refuse to be comforted while my son is not comforted. And until this war is over and he is home and safe, I will not be comforted. And there was silence. And I said very quietly, I think that's your monologue. At the UNBROKEN hospital here in Lviv, the work that they're doing is literally changing our knowledge of the effects of shock on neurology and the neurology of how arts can play an essential part in the recovery. In a cohort of former prisoners of war, many of them were in a deep state of shock, and you could see in the EEGs almost no brain activity in the frontal cortex. Traditional therapy, such as antidepressants or antipsychotic drugs or opiates, had the effect of letting them get some sleep, but did nothing to regenerate the brain activity in the frontal cortex. Traditional talk therapy inevitably would lead them to a flashback of the systematic violence that they had endured and did no good. The only thing that worked was art therapy. And within 6 weeks, brain activity returned to within a normal level. Now, that wasn't the end of the story, because simply beginning to function, to have activity, is the first step. But then trying that long, hard work of creating a meaning from this that is authentic to you, that allows you not so much to return to the person you were, that person is gone, but to get ownership of the person you're about to become. And there was one former POW who was working in a theater program in a community center named Volodymyr, who was part of a group of soldiers of theater, and using Ukrainian playwrights, Ukrainian poets, to try and find some sense in their experience, to gain back autonomy over their lives. And at one point during that period, I heard the news that the Shakespeare's Globe in London had asked me to create a theater piece on Shakespeare and well-being. And I mentioned it, and this fellow says to me, when you go to Shakespeare's Globe, I want you to recite my monologue, the to be or not to be monologue, but do it in Ukrainian. And I smiled and of course said yes, but in my mind I'm thinking, I'm not going to memorize this thing in Ukrainian. This is too difficult a language. So a number of weeks before the event, I heard news that he had been released from the program and had been sent back to the front and was killed. So I began the piece at Shakespeare's Globe like this. Ят питання. Бути чи не бути? У чому більші гідності скоритися у дромдолі і ляті під стрілі? Чи опором зустріти чорні вілі нещаст і тим спинати їх, заснути, померти. Зазнати, як сан познавуть бою, нервів, тіла, і з ними і страждан. Така разка цілком годиться. Так, зустріти спати. І що? І сні дивиться? It's not just about recovery and resilience. It's about remembering the people that we've lost. And what you are doing here is not just fighting for Ukrainian independence. You are fighting for what it means to be human. And the world thanks you. Slava Ukraini.
Дякую. Хочу ще одного друга запросити,
I would like to invite one more friend of ours. Healing Arts Lviv wouldn't have happened without this person. This is also my friend, Professor of King's College London, Henry Redwood.
I do a lot of public speaking and I follow a lot of great speakers, but I can safely say that following Chris is maybe the hardest thing I ever have to do. I cannot recite Shakespeare even in English, let alone in a language that Chris doesn't even speak, and neither do I. So I'm going to try and rethink everything that I was going to say, because if you, I think, don't believe in art and health, after what Chris has said to you, then maybe we can't ever convince you of that fact. Maybe instead I'm trained as a historian, and now I work in international relations. I can think about how we have got to where we are today, which is an incredible congress, thanks to Veronika and the art team and everyone at the city authority, which has brought together people from around the world to discuss and think through how art and health can change how we think, not just about how we respond to trauma, but how we solve the crises that we all face around the world today. Because it's not always been like this. I started working with the arts as a response to conflict and violence 20 years ago, and at that point in time, the idea that we could use the arts to help solve the biggest, perhaps, problems that we face as humanity, war and trauma, was beyond fringe. I would have to start every talk by trying to convince everyone about the fact that we should be taking art seriously within this space. One of international relations, a very famous, preeminent international relations scholar from America, Alexander Wint, felt confident enough to declare that poetry, literature, and other humanistic disciplines are not designed to explain global war or third world poverty. I think it's safe to say that he's wrong, and this Congress demonstrates that fact. Arts and health aren't any longer fringe. They're part of how we imagine how we must respond to the crises we face across the globe. And why has this shift occurred? I think increasingly across the world, we are seeing crisis after crisis, and we often try and think of these as isolated incidents, but they're not. They're a result of system failure, and at the heart of that failure is to think creatively and imaginatively about how we solve the problems that we face together as a global society. In a place where I work, a university, King's College London, our students are no longer able to cope adequately with everyday life. They struggle to submit their assessments on time, they struggle to engage in the fullest way possible, and the reason that they cite is always mental health. The situation in Ukraine is obviously different, both in terms of scale and severity, though I wouldn't say that those problems are unconnected. I think they are. I think there are two interconnected problems that unite this. One is a failure of imagination and creativity, and the second is a lack of capacity. And I feel strongly, as confidently as Alex Wendt did, he was wrong and I'm right, that the arts are the solution, or at least part of the solution to these problems that we face. They are part of the solution to the lack of capacity, and they're part of the solution to the lack of imagination. Why is this international congress being held in Ukraine? Perhaps seems, and particularly in Lviv, perhaps seems like there's an obvious answer to that. There is a war here that is not just affecting Ukraine, but it's threatening the rest of Europe and arguably the whole world. And it's this type of conflict that tends to draw the attention of international actors like the World Health Organizations or researchers like me from King's College London. But it's much more than this. The reason that it's here in Lviv is much more than this. Because as we've already seen, across Ukraine, but I think particularly within Lviv, we are seeing the leadership in art and health from organizations like Art., the Lviv City Authority, from the National Academy of Arts, that is reasserting creativity within how we think about responding to these crises that we're facing. This is my third year of coming to Ukraine to deliver training programs around trauma-attuned arts, attend congresses like this. And as Chris said, I think we are constantly, those that are privileged enough to come here in person, overwhelmed by the practice that we see, the art camps that are working with children living near the front line. embodied movement working with displaced persons from the East, or as Chris has already said, the world-leading practice of integrating art therapies within rehabilitation projects at UNBROKEN. I think in particular the thing that I've seen here, which I don't know if I've witnessed elsewhere, is the strength that has come from the grassroots, from civil society, who have, without ever being asked to, adapted everything that they were doing already to help defend Ukraine and imagine a positive future. But what this is doing, as has already been said, is it's doing more than just helping with recovery or resilience. It's helping us rethink what those concepts mean. We still think about resilience in a very narrow way in terms of physical security. Yet when we turn through the arts and the type of work that we see with organizations like Art, we see a reimagining of resilience that embraces all that a human and our societies can be, and that centers imagination and possibility at the heart of everything. We are not there yet, or else we wouldn't need to have this Congress. We are not yet harnessing the full power of the arts or those that are practicing it. Those with power are still too reluctant to give it away to those that are really making a difference in the world. There are still lots within the arts and healthcare communities that remain skeptical, and practice remains fragmented and dispersed. We've been running this trauma-attuned art summer school, and me, Darren and Veronika will be speaking to you more about our framework on Sunday or Monday. I'm losing track of the days of the week. For 3 years now, and the one thing that we always hear from our participants, our amazing participants, many of whom are in the room, is that they're yet to find a proper sense of community for their work. They are neither taken seriously by artists that practice art for art's sake, nor by healthcare professionals. And yet, within these types of spaces, we start to forge the communities that can bring coherence and greater power to all the work that's already been happening. We obviously need more funding, that goes without saying, and we need to be open to creativity, and in particular to the disruption that must bring, right? We cannot any longer just recreate the same patterns of practice, the same people with power holding on to their power. We must embrace disruption as a core part of this, because we can't continue to turn to the past for solutions. They have not brought us peace anywhere in the world, and they've not been able to prevent any crisis. We need new solutions and new imagination, and I think it's through art that we can do this, and through this Congress I hope that we take some substantial steps in thinking about this, not just as something that's aspirational, but as something that's practical and now, because it's needed. Thank you.
So yes, it's really important that we give a round of applause to the speaker who's been contributing a lot. And before I express gratitude, I have 5 minutes left for my opening words, because of course we have fantastic people who made it possible for us to organize this Congress. When we had a conversation with Henry today, what we are going to discuss, it turned out that both of us really wanted to focus on imagination. You heard about this concept when we are having this conversation. So this is just the way it happened. We didn't plan it to be this way, but I realized that Henry speaks about a different kind of imagination that I would like to discuss with you now, because I think that I saw Yulia Khomchin here. Yes, we have Yulia here, and I am so grateful to you that we have something to rely on with this initiative. 4 years ago, there was a culture congress in Lviv. That was one of the events which takes place every 2 years in Lviv. At this event, Roman Kacher, psychiatrist, psychotherapist, mentioned this thing. He talked about the condition of community, society, and he said that a healthy brain has a hope. And this hope, we can verify it through imagination. It is through arts that we can have both imagination and hope. And I was so scared, and it was so challenging for me to think about the hope, but the hope is future. As a matter of fact, arts, on the one hand, evolutionary speaking, it engages different experiences that we have of a memory. When we try to take in some arts or to create arts, we activate these three parts. We actualize the past, and also we are here. It's about our awareness of us being present. We think about this arts. It could be music, it could be music playing, it could be anything. It could be any media that is used, especially if we co-create it. I also listened to Marta that there is some participatory practices in municipal program. This is exactly what we need, and it's all about co-creation. It is about resilience. If you take a look at a poster, and I really love the poster that we have, it's written there, healing arts, experience, art that heals, experience that connects. When I listen to our dear guests, when I talk to veterans or physicians, my biggest scare is that our experiences are so different that we cannot empathize with each other. We do not know what another person experienced, and also what the mayor mentioned, we don't know how it feels to be an amputee, but it's also about so many other experiences and so many other losses people experience. That is why it's so important that arts can help us to heal, and it's great to have arts therapy, but we understand that arts could become a tool above all of that, as Christopher Bailey said. That is why I'm so grateful to all of you, and I don't think that I really need to preach so much about that. You all know that it is not fortuitous that we gathered here, so I will start expressing my gratitude. My first gratitude goes to the armed forces of Ukraine for making it possible for us to be here and to feel safe. Our therapy force, my thanks also go to you. It is a small team of people. We have 4 persons working full-time, and we also have people supporting us from different parts of the globe. And now official gratitude, the initiative that we have here. This is what was based on Jameel Arts and Health Lab, Arts and Health, World Health Organization as part of Health Resilience Partnership. It's financed by the European Union, implemented by the coalition that we have on the crossroads of arts, healthcare. Also, we have the Institute of Strategies of Culture, UNBROKEN Rehabilitation Center, King's College London, Lviv City Radio, the Institute of the Strategies of Culture, Lviv Municipality. Also, let us express gratitude to Natalia and Yulia, who have been helping us a lot with their advice and with other inspiring events. So actually, I would like to say that we do not create anything from scratch here. We just support each other. At 7:30, there will be a veterans theater. In the courtyard, you have to turn left, because if you go straight, this is not a good idea. So just make sure that you walk around it. Then we will also organize the translation for our guests. If you need interpretation, thank you for joining us today.